back on the Boulevard, Thursday, April 3rd. As always, here to prove to you there is no such thing as football season. We're presented by the Believe Network tonight. He is TPG. I am Matty Fresh. Week 2 on the horizon, and we are the only UFL show that will not overreact to Week 1. And I'm counting on you to keep that promise, TPG, because your Battlehawks and my Defenders both 1-0, and I know we're both about to get caught looking ahead to Week 3, the showdown between St. Louis and DC. Can't do that. Got some tricky games. We've also got best bets at 4-0. And the XFL Conference, 2-0 over the USFL head-to-head. We haven't forgot about that either. But we've moved on from the victory lap, and we're strictly business now, TPG. Am I right?
Matt, you say you're strictly business, but nobody knows about this horrible April Fool's Day prank that you try to pull on me. So I'm going to get into it. So the DC douchebag on the left hand of your screen, Matty Fresh, gives me a call Tuesday morning. I'm on my way to work, listening to the Monday show. Matt calls me up and says, hey, man, show was great. Talking about that. Midway through, as he's talking to me, he's like, wait, Steven's giving me a call. Let me give you a call back. Steven Gonzalez. So hangs up the phone, gives me a call back a little later, and says, hey, I got some good news and some bad news. And I'm like, oh boy, what is it? So he's like, good news is we can air the interview with Steven. But the bad news is that the players went on strike and HQ is completely shut down. So as soon as he tells me this, I'm having flashbacks to XFL 2020 and I'm absolutely pissed off. I'm screaming at Matt over the phone saying F the league, get these guys better health care. This sucks for everyone. The games were going to be so good this weekend. The league's going to go bankrupt now because we don't have any TV revenue. And I'm just absolutely pissed off. So Matt's like, hey, let me know when you get to work, when you'll be able to dip out. If you could dip out early, we should record an emergency podcast tonight and update everyone on this matter. So I'm like, all right. I'm still really upset. Drive the rest of my way to work in complete silence. Don't want to listen to the show. Don't want to listen to any UFL content or consume any of it just because I'm so mad. And as soon as I get to work, I literally pick up the phone, call my girlfriend and tell her hey babe, I think my weekends are going to start freeing up now because I won't have UFL to watch and do all this. So going to work then, head down, pissed off, super mad about everything, just get right to work. And about an hour into my workday, kind of know what's going to happen throughout the day. So I give Matt a text being like, hey, I'm going to be home a little later tonight, around 6-7 o'clock. I'll be able to hop on the pod then. So then right after I send him the text, he gives me the call and says, April Fools. And I was so pissed, and even called my girlfriend after and told her yeah, Matt was messing with me. And she was like, I knew he was messing with you. How did you not know what day it was? And yeah, I got duped pretty hard. I had no idea what day it was. And, I was pissed off, but you know what? Now I'm excited because these games are getting played this weekend. Matt, you're a scumbag for that, but I guess I'm the new guy, so I'll roll with the punches.
Poor Mrs. TPG. I think I feel the worse for her at this point. She was, pulling up the calendar, and then she realized that she was about to book all your weekends out. Wait a second, this idiot, it's April 1st. But, hey, welcome to the Boulevard, TPG. This is what we do. So we do have Week 2 games.
Yeah, these games are getting played.
We have Michigan, St. Louis, DC, and Arlington, all at 1-0, with Birmingham, San Antonio, Memphis, and Houston all at 0-1. Which means the 1-0 and 0-1 teams all go head-to-head. So, you never know. We could have an 8-way tie for first at 1-1 next week. Can you imagine? That'd be something. But, yeah, I doubt that because the Houston Roughnecks exist. So we have to take that into account. TPG talked about Steven Gonzalez. Back on Monday, we did get a chance to catch up with him, one of our favorites. He was actually our first ever guest on the Boulevard 2 years ago, so enjoy. Joined now by Battlehawks offensive lineman Steven Gonzalez, proud Penn State alum, 273 rushing yards for St. Louis in the opener. Steven, great to have you. Just initial thoughts on now having the UFL record with Sailors and Howard running behind you.
Hey, Matty, thanks for having me on again, brother. Happy to be back. Happy Spring Boulevard is back on again. We're back in full flow again. But yeah, speaking on the performance, I mean, it was just all around performance. We just got to give a hands to pretty much. I mean, it was just a team win in general. Defense stepped up. They had two turnovers on downs. So, they helped us get more opportunities to be able to run the ball and do what we want to do on offense. Special teams played their ass off like they always do. And, quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, and obviously O-line, tight ends. I mean, everyone was just kind of in sync, and there's obviously always things you got to clean up, after the game. Not everything's perfect, but, to be able to set that record and to rush for so many yards, especially when, at times we struggled a little bit running the ball last year. I mean, it was good to set the tone for the year that, we are going to run the ball and, that's going to be our identity. So.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing was that games were played. There was some question that, with the labor issues going on, were we going to have a kickoff weekend? And we had a damn good one. I just want to get this kind of out of the way off the top. So, we had heard that the negotiations were continuing potentially into today. Any comments that you have on where things stand right now heading into week 2?
So I unfortunately signed an NDA, so I can't really speak too much on this matter and topic, unfortunately. But what I can say is that we are, as a union, as a players' union with the lawyers, we are actively trying to work out a CBA, trying to work out a deal. We're trying to work with the league. So, let's just see where it goes. We're hoping that we can get a deal done soon. But, we've been trying for months, but, this is just a very laborious process and, it's just tough. But we're hopeful we'll get the deal done soon in our favor.
Awesome. All right, right back into football. We have my co-host now is a big-time Battlehawks fan. TPG has a couple questions for you. TPG, you're up, man.
How's it going, Steven? Just want to congratulate you and the team on a great win. I had a lot of fun Friday night watching it from my living room. You guys dominated from start to finish. It was an awesome showing. So getting into my first question for you. So every starting offensive lineman on this team has been on the Battlehawks for a couple seasons, yourself included, heading into your third year. Can you speak on how important the continuity is in this league, given the fact that there's no off-season training and such a short training camp?
Yeah, I mean, that's typically where you build continuity with teams, especially, in the pro level at the NFL. You are in OTAs, you're in training camp, you're in off-season. So you're always with the guys for at least half the year. So that's kind of where you build the continuity. So, all of us, especially as O-line, that's huge. It's 5 guys working as one. So for us to, most of us pretty much are back for year 3. I know Beach is back for year 2, but I mean, he played. We knew who he was in Orlando. So, this is not like it's his first rodeo around. So, just to have that continuity back, especially up front, is huge, especially for just the entire offense, Because at the end of the day, I mean, our offense goes as our O-line goes. So if we're playing well, the rest of the offense will play well.
Always got to give credit to the guys up front. They set the tone early, so it was great to see that run game clicking right off the bat. So before the game started, Coach Beck had a little pregame interview, and he talked about wanting to see a violent mentality from his offensive line and defensive line. But I thought that type of mentality was portrayed throughout every position group. Can you speak on the gritty, hard-nosed culture that Coach Beck has instilled in this team?
Yeah, I mean, you saw year 1 when, the first 2 games we were down. The first game we were down, 15-9 with 40 seconds left. No one thought we were going to come back. So, I mean, like I said, a lot of these guys are from that year 1 and, throughout the years of just developing bonds and continuity. And hearing the same message for already, this is my 3rd year. I know a lot of guys, this is their 3rd year. So hearing the same message over and over again is just controlled violence, execution, and trusting in the plan, trusting in the coaches, trusting in each other. So, it just goes apart along with our culture and what Coach Beck and his staff has built throughout the years.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun watching you guys push those Roughnecks around. Awesome game. Going into my last question. So this Sunday night, the rematch of the playoff game from last year. What's the team's mentality heading into this week?
We kind of went over Houston, the game film, because we had the last couple of days off. So we'll discuss more the mentality tomorrow when we meet about San Antonio and everything. But I don't think the mentality changes. We want to go 1-0 every week. Every game is our championship game, so we treat it as such. And at the end of the day, like I said, we all preach the same message. So it's always believing in each other, executing our assignments, executing the game plan, and trusting in each other, trusting the coaches, trusting the staff, and all around trust within the team. And that just gets us to where we want to go. So at the end of the day, the mentality will never change throughout the week. We're always attacking everyone the same, and we treat everyone the same.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Well, I'm really looking forward to Sunday night, Steven. Best of luck to you and the rest of the Battlehawks. Let's get this one done.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Steven, I did have one for you as I hear you talk about the continuity on offense. Obviously, I'm sure AJ ran things a little bit differently when it comes to checks and different things. You have different styles of players. And for you guys, you never really had the two quarterback thing going on much. You did have to adjust a little when AJ was hurt last season with Manny coming in. But how's it looking now in the quarterback room as far as Manny and Max both getting some reps on Friday night and going into week 2? How do you think Coach Beck is looking at and Coach McGagan looking at approaching the quarterback situation?
So I'm not in those meetings, so I really, Matty, I can't really, tell you what's actually being said, but I believe that we're going to keep the same system. We're going to go with what works and, with what's helping us, win games and score offensively and gain a lot of yards and, not turning over the ball and being efficient. So at the end of the day, like I said, if it's the 2 QB system that works, it's fine. If it's 1 QB, at the end of the day, we all have to execute on all our parts and make their job a little bit easier because both of them have a tough job. So, if we're doing our job and we're handling our responsibilities all across the board on offense, it makes those guys' life easier. And, if it's 2 QBs, then it's 2 QBs. For us, it doesn't matter. We still gotta block inside zone like inside zone, no matter if it's Max back there or Manny. So.
Yeah, and I feel like we ask you this every year. We've had you on 3 years. You are our first guest ever on Springball Boulevard, so we'd love to have you back. The question we ask you every year, and it's like I feel like year 1, you got introduced to the St. Louis fans. Last year, it was more of a love affair where it's like, man, you really built your bond with the St. Louis fans and became a fan favorite. When you go to get on that plane this week and you go to fly back to St. Louis, now as your 3rd year here, and everybody knows who 74 is now. What's that like and kind of reflecting on how far it's come?
I mean, it's been a hell of a journey, I'm super grateful. I got to thank God, for putting me in this position, for giving me this opportunity. First and foremost, got to thank Coach Beck as well. And, Dave Boulder for bringing me on the team 3 years ago. But honestly, man, it's going to be fun. I'm super excited to go back to St. Louis. That first game in St. Louis is always a fun one. It's probably going to be definitely 35 plus, so and especially, going against San Antonio, the team we played last year, it's going to be a big game. And it's, I'm just looking forward for it. I love going back to St. Louis every time. I love seeing the fans. Even this weekend, all the fans that traveled, I appreciated them for, coming out and supporting us. And, I know that's not easy to get all the way out here, but I mean, our fans just they set the tone. They do a hell of a job with it, and they set the tone, for the rest of the league. So hopefully the other team's fans can kind of wake up a little bit.
Yeah, and lucky you get to do it 6 times this season. Extra home game in the Dome, and maybe even more if there's playoffs, and maybe even a championship back in St. Louis. We'll see. No confirmation on where that game is yet, but we're hearing some rumors that the Dome would be a great host, and I think it would too. Steven, appreciate you joining us, man. Good luck against San Antonio. Hope that crowd is wild. Hope they pack the place out. And we'll catch up with you as the season goes on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, fellas. I appreciate y'all.
All right, we got to plug the big man's merch now, the official Steven Gonzalez shirt that he was rocking. Link is in the description on YouTube. I know TPG is about to go out and order himself one.
Yeah, can I get one of those shirts? Like, those
Sick.
are sweet.
Sick. Go support the man.
Is it just him that has those shirts, or do a lot of the Battlehawks players have them? Do you know that, Matt?
Not a Battlehawks fan. I wouldn't know, but that might be something you need to find out.
I thought maybe you would know since Steven's your boy, but maybe I'll have to hit him up then and figure that out.
Yeah, we need to figure it out because there's going to be some week 3 bets going on. And again, I don't want to get caught looking ahead of this game. It's hard not to when you have you and me here, but like we're going to do something, so you should probably look into that.
I will.
We got to have a friendly wager on that. But
absolutely.
Pump the brakes. We got week 2. And we did get Gonzo's take on this game, so let's give you ours. It's St. Louis hosting San Antonio in the 2025 Dome opener, 5:30 Central on Sunday, FS1. Battlehawks a 7-point home favorite. Total here is at 39.5. 2 things that overbettors are going to love in this one, TPG. Number 1, you're inside. And can you guess number 2 for an overbetter?
It's a rematch? I don't know. I don't know.
You're on brand new turf.
Ooh.
Newly installed to make the Battle Dome look nice and green from that yellowish brown it had been in years prior. I don't think it'll be as green as
Rams turf.
Yeah, I was gonna say it won't be that green. That was literally like artificial crayon green. I think this will be a little more grass green. But here's the question I want to start with because it's been plaguing me all week. Is the Brahmas offense broken? And I know that might sound like a week 1 overreaction, and I just promised everybody I wouldn't overreact, but it's not because they also got blanked in the title game last year. So I think it's a fair question. I mean, you're at a point here where you have 7 or 8 guys back on offense, and the best you can do is muster 1 garbage time touchdown against a defense in Arlington who couldn't stop me, TPG, and 9 listeners last year. So I'm a little concerned, and I don't know. I'm not ready to fire AJ Smith yet, obviously, but man, they've got to bounce back, and you're going to hate to hear this as a St. Louis fan. I think they will. Now, it's not going to be over 200 on the ground like it was, over 400 total yards like it was last year in the XFL Conference Championship, but they'll definitely improve from week 1, right? If I'm AJ Smith, here's where I'm at, TPG. Kellen Mond gets a full 4-quarter opportunity on Sunday to rise to the occasion against what I think is the league's best pass defense. If he does, and they win, or even if he looks good in a loss, he's our quarterback. He's the guy, full speed ahead with Mond. If not, and this is a repeat of week 1, sorry, this is Kevin Hogan's team in week 3. I think Hogan's overlooked to begin with, honestly. He's a 9th-year pro, vet guy, running ability as well. But this has to be an early proving ground for Kellen Mond. You can't just come in the UFL and assume, I had all this marketing and all this hype, and I played in the NFL, and I was a star at A&M. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. You got to perform now. Chase Garber's passed this same test last year. Can Mond do it in 2025? Well, it becomes a question. He can't do it all by himself, right? Going to need help. I think the Brahmas' best bet here is to feed McFarland and feed Lovett. You don't need 6 carries for your third back. Deactivate him and activate an extra tight end or an extra offensive lineman to come in the rotation if your starters are having trouble. You start with the run. That's going to open up some outside shots to Jacob Harris, who was unguardable, right, against Arlington. They showed us that on that back shoulder fade. Battlehawks did show us they can kind of limit those big body receivers outside because of Kiki Chisholm, I think, was held to just 2 catches in week 1 with Houston. They also limited production from the slot. Justin Hall was pretty much blanketed the entire night. So, man, I think Harris here is probably the real deal in the pass game. If they get to the red zone, they're probably calling a fade for the guy, right? I mean, that's a perfect thing for him at 6'5", 200. None of that I just talked about will matter if you can't block. The Brahmas gave up 7 tackles for loss against Arlington. 1/3, TPG, of their rushing attempts against Arlington were stuffed for no gain or a loss. And they lived in 3rd and long because of it. If they do it again, PETA and Travis Feeney are going to body bag Mond. So have to get the first downs early on in the drive. Or maybe even a 3rd and manageable. You can't live in 3rd and long. Average 3rd down distance was 11 last week. Now, they did have a bright spot. Didn't turn the ball over. So if they can do that again in St. Louis, they will have a shot. I do give the Battlehawks D the edge here slightly because the talent St. Louis is about to see offensively from San Antonio is worlds above what the lowly Roughnecks just put out there in that scrimmage, whatever you want to call that was in week 1. I have Brahma scoring in the 15 to 19 range, which will be enough to cover the 7. I also lean the under 39.5 here, TPG.
Well, yeah, hopefully CPJ could lock up Jacob Harris on the outside, and those 2 safeties that we got that former NFL guys both had a pick last week. We'll have an answer for these explosive San Antonio wide receivers. But taking a look at the Battlehawks offense, right? This O-line needs to come out swinging just like they did last week. And if they approach this game with the same dominant mentality, it really shouldn't be close. Looking at San Antonio's defense in week 1, they were the worst defense next to Houston, right? Second worst defense next to Houston. Gave up 347 yards of total offense with 180 of those coming on the ground. And we saw the injury report, Matt, the other day, and it looks like multiple defensive starters for the Brahmas appeared on the report with the did not practice on Wednesday. Guys like Prince Emili, Garrett Nelson, and Tavante Beckett. Obviously, this game's Sunday night, so they have a full practice week ahead of them, but this is something that we'll have to monitor throughout the week going forward. But as for this Battlehawks offense, just like last week, right? It's really important to get Peasy going early and involved. And I would also like to see Hakeem Butler get some touches as well. He was also did not practice on Wednesday with a hamstring. So like I said, we got a lot of time till this game. So something we will also continue to monitor. But Manny Wilkins, I don't really see him struggling in this game at all, especially with the San Antonio Brahmas showed us last week, and I think he will continue to improve. A little thing about Manny Wilkins, out of the 5 quarterbacks that played the entire game, you got Mond, Tamu, Perez, McRipper, and Wilkins, right? Obviously, Duggan came in for Wilkins, and Holt Ehlers, yeah, I'm saying it right, yeah. Came in for Perez, but those guys didn't throw a pass. So out of the 5 guys that played the entire game and were throwing a lot, Manny had the least amount of passing attempts out of those 5 guys with 22, but still had the second most yards out of any quarterback in week 1. So he was pretty damn efficient throwing the football, and I think he'll continue to show that this week. And aside from Bryce Perkins, there was no other quarterback in this league other than Manny Wilkins that can make plays in the open field and make defenders miss. Plus, he showed he's not a bitch either, lowering his shoulder and running over Roughnecks defenders. So Sunday night, I'm predicting a beatdown in the Battle Dome, Hawks by a touchdown, horns down.
You know what? Give me the Brahmas. Give me the Brahmas.
Oh my gosh.
You make a good. You make a
DC
good point.
Douchebag.
You make a good point with the defensive injuries. They do scare me a little bit. But enough with the Manny Wilkins. We don't actually trust this guy, do we?
What do you mean?
What quarterback in the league wouldn't be efficient against Houston? Is there a guy you can name that wouldn't have been efficient against Houston?
Like I said, Matt, we don't make the schedule. We play the games that are on it. We're a good team, and we took care of business. Manny did what he had to do.
I mean, you might want to call your quarterback back when you played in some D3 ball, and I think he would have been efficient against Houston. Anyway, listen, I think the point is at some point this season, you'll probably look back at week 1 and wish Houston didn't make Manny Wilkins look so phenomenal because Max Duggan then would have played more against San Antonio. I don't think Manny's going to look very good. I think it comes down to a last-second field goal, and I do want to give the St. Louis crowd some value here when a game goes to the wire because it will be bonkers, but destroying is going to spoil the dome opener the buzzer.
No.
At the buzzer. Horns forward. Brahmas. Money line. Not a best bet. Wait for best bets to see my play there. But destroying going to get his moment. How about that for a viral moment?
I think the motivation level is going to be high with this Battlehawks team. This is a team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year, so they're going to come hungry.
We'll see. Let's jump into Friday night. Michigan hosting Birmingham for early control of the USFL side. Kickoff 8 p.m. in Ford Field. Stallions a 1.5-point road favorite total at 37.5. Man, here we go again, Mike Nolan. 0-4 against Skip Holtz and the Stallions. But there's a first for everything, right? I mean, if Michigan finds a way to win this game, I'm going to call it. The USFL Conference Championship will be in Ford Field in June. Unless there's a monster truck rally or whatever nonsense happened.
A high school graduation?
Was that what it was last year? Yeah, whatever happened last year.
I think it was. It was like a college or high school graduation.
Yeah, they weren't
going
to get it anyway, but it's funny that they couldn't have had it even if they did get first in the USFL. That'll be different this year. If they can win this game, it's a wrap. They're getting the 1 seed. I think we can pretty much eliminate Memphis and Houston at this point now. Again, here come the overreactions already. Anyway, I'll give you 2 reasons. This is Michigan's best shot to beat the Stallions. Number 1, Bryce Perkins is finally QB1, right? Thank God. And 2, this travel spot for Birmingham is awful. One of the worst I've seen in spring football since like Seattle used to have to fly back and forth to the Pacific Northwest. And Danucci said they played like 5 games in 20 days or something. But to take you to Birmingham's travel situation, Sunday night they fly back after losing to DC. Miserable plane ride, longest flight in the league. They get back after midnight. They're off Monday. They practice Tuesday, Wednesday. It's terrible, by the way, in Arlington this week. Awful weather. Right back on the plane to Michigan Thursday. They had to cram for this. And I know Michigan played Sunday too, so fine, but that game was over by 2 p.m. And a shorter flight, they get back home earlier. The Panthers have to take advantage of that. They had more time to prepare, more time to recover, and you're starting to see the effects of that. Stallions down 2 key starters this week. Starting running back CJ Marable, starting safety Kenny Robinson. Both out. So I'm once again asking Mike Nolan to let Bryce Perkins cook. Please. Let him play the full game. They scored all 20 offensive points with him at quarterback. When Etling came in, it was ugly. Punt, 3 and out. This is the most obvious decision ever. You have a playmaker who probably belongs in the NFL. Stop leaving him on the bench. Also, Bryce, if you're watching tonight, can we not hurdle and end up on the IR again? Please, for the sake of the UFL. Just put your shoulder down or slide instead. Stop hurdling people. It's fun to watch until you break your leg. Here's the keys. Perkins' ability to utilize the RPO and throw on the run. We saw Jordan Ta'amu gash the Birmingham defense for 211 through the air on Sunday. Perkins, similar type of player, right? But I think even with more scrambling upside. I don't think Michigan can really establish much of a run game. They only had 3 yards a carry against Memphis. It's not encouraging there. I mean, Birmingham held DC to 3 yards a carry. So run defense was a high point for the Stallions. But it's this underrated trio of receivers that Michigan is now running out there with Sims, Mariner, and Malik Turner. I mean, 5 targets and 5 catches for Turner out of the slot. DC tore up that Stallions defense with the slot receivers and a 5-man rotation out wide. So I expect a very similar approach for Michigan and their pass catchers here. Perkins, we know, is going to take off several times. Over 5.5 carries is a lock. He has to beat the blitz. I think he runs 10 to 12 times here. And while I do think the Stallions match up well here in the trenches because of Carlos Davis, who had a huge interception, by the way, big man pick against DC on a screen, he continues to dominate. I still give Michigan's offense the slight edge here. The Stallions, TPG, gave up 8 chunk plays on Sunday. That's either a 10-yard run or a 15-yard pass. And now you're starting safeties out to make it worse. So as bad as it looked offensively for Birmingham, the only bright spot really in the whole game for the defense was buckling down in the red zone. They forced a bunch of field goals out of DC. Maybe they can do that again with Michigan. And like you mentioned on Monday, the kicking game wasn't great for the Panthers. Maybe they can get back indoors and out of that wind in Memphis, and that'll help that. But the spread and the total here are pretty sharp. So this is a big stay away from me from a betting perspective. I will play some player props, of course, but really hard to pick a profitable side here. What say you?
Matt, what if I just texted you one day and said, hey, what I can't record a podcast tonight because personal reasons. Pull a CJ Marable on you. What would your response be to that? You want to be
See
too
ya.
happy, right?
Yeah, no, this
See
is
ya.
this is
Exactly.
the big time, man. This is lights, camera, action. You're replaceable. You got to go. Especially when Ricky
yeah.
Person's behind you, right?
Exactly. Especially
Yeah.
when he's in the backfield too. But yeah, interesting to see that pop up on the injury report. But let's get into this Michigan Panthers defense. So they gave up the fewest rushing yards out of any team in week 1 with 69. Pause. Holding Memphis to only 2.9 yards per carry. And Ginda led this unit with 11 tackles. And this Birmingham offense last week wasn't very good on the ground. Person and Marable held to only 3.2 yards per rush, as we alluded to. CJ Marable is out, and this offensive line isn't looking much up either. Obviously, the 8 sacks, and it looks like going through that depth chart, which, Matt, I don't know how much stock I really want to put in the depth chart, because we've seen time and time again that, you know, it'll say a guy's starting, but they're still going to rotate. And just like last week, they had Perkins QB1, but they still put it Etling in. So yeah, be weary about those depth charts. They're not always like the most accurate, I think, but it looks like they're going to be rocking with the same offensive line. So this unit's definitely going to have to step up, and it's not going to be easy at all, because in my opinion, I think Michigan has maybe the second best secondary in the league, led by their 2 starting safeties, Kai Nakuda and Bryce Tornan. We highlighted on the Monday show that they both had 2 big picks late in the game. Bryce Tornan, a former all-USFL guy, and Kai Nakuda, an all-UFL guy last year. So pretty good secondary. And if you're Birmingham, I don't know. It said Magoo QB1, but I don't know how you go with him, especially after seeing what he did last week.
Short week, too. Oh.
Exactly. I mean, and it looked like he got beat up, too, getting slammed to the turf multiple times. So I would not be surprised if we see Matt Corral in this game. I sung his praises high last week and Monday, so I'm not going to talk any more about him. You guys know what my opinion is, but hopefully you could give this team a spark. But with that being said, the Panthers 0-5 versus the Stallions since 2022. Rematch of the USFL championship from last year, and a lot of these same Panthers players were on the team a year ago. So just like the Battlehawks, I think for this Michigan team, the motivation is going to be high. Give me the Panthers.
I love this. Give me the Stallions. Give me the Stallions here in week 2. But Michigan in the long run. I think Mike Nolan being 0-5 or even 0-6 against Skip going into the playoffs will be the big narrative, right, for this year's USFL Conference Championship. And that's going to set up a great underdog story when the time comes. I'll tell you why I'm picking Birmingham. I trust Skip Holtz to use some common sense and play Matt Corral more this time around. I could see it in his eyes in the presser, right? That he thought about it and he's like, I probably should have done that. Short leash, very short leash for Ripper Magoo in week 2. Birmingham wins a tight one.
Matt, you think Stallions will beat them both times in the regular season, and then the Panthers will go into the playoffs and knock them at
maybe not
0-7 lifetime? I think they're going to split.
Yeah.
During the course of the season. They're going to split.
Yeah.
They're going to split, and it's going to come down to that playoff game, and that'll be a good one. Little look ahead, but we're definitely getting way too ahead of ourselves. We're talking about stuff that's not happening for another 8 weeks. So
would be a great story though, right? Mike Nolan rolls in like 0-6 against Skip, and then they beat him in the
It would be.
Yeah, but this is week 2. Anyway, to the next one, the team with the most buzz around them at UFL HQ this week is the 1-0 DC Defenders, who took that horse by the reins, saddled him up, and proved to everybody Skip Holtz is beatable. But they couldn't have done it without our next guest on the Boulevard. Enjoy. Here now with UFL Special Teams Player of the Week, DC Defenders kicker Matt McCrane. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to be on. It's excited to talk spring football.
So you're a perfect 4 for 4 on Sunday. You have a long of 53 when the team really needed it the most there in the fourth quarter. How'd it feel to single-handedly outscore Birmingham on Sunday?
At the end of the day, I don't control the attempts that I have. I'm called to run onto the field and kick the ball, and that's what I did. And so, yeah, it ultimately led to 12 points and helped our team out. But the last kick was blocked, so it could have easily been 3 for 4, and they drive down the field, and all they need is a touchdown to beat us. So. Definitely a close one. But yeah, it was an awesome game, man. It was definitely, if you weren't there, it was one that you didn't want to miss.
Yeah, and I've always thought, watching you over the years, that kind of what separated you, and probably, in my opinion, why you should have been all UFL, is that you do it outside in the elements more than a lot of these guys. I mean, you only get what, 2 or 3 games inside a season? You got Michigan, San Antonio, St. Louis. They probably get 7 or 8 games indoors. So does that matter as much as I think it does? Like, our kickers out there dreaming about, signing on with a team that plays under the roof.
I mean, absolutely. You guys, you look at guys that play, in the AFC North versus guys that, play in a dome or play in southern states, as far as the NFL is concerned. But, definitely, I think this year our schedule is pretty favorable for us. We do have Michigan in San Antonio. So I think there's 3 or 4 games that we have indoors that we didn't have last year. And so, yeah, it is. It definitely is tough. Audi Field is especially tough. I think it swirls there nonstop. I don't think we had a game there last year where it wasn't windy, or raining, and not to mention playing on a sand base. I think last year it was almost like a winter rye that they had, and then they resawed it after our season. So yeah, the not only the wind element, but the field surface as well. This last game was probably the nicest it's ever been, only because DC United had games before us, and so they cut the grass nice and short. That didn't happen a lot last year, so we were playing in long grass, a really sandy field. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to play in environments like that. But at the end of the day, this is the team that I get to play for and do the best that we can.
Yeah, I noticed that, and a lot of other media did too. We're kind of looking around up in the press box saying, this looks greener than it usually does. It looked really good, and I hope they can keep that rolling this week. There we go.
Yeah, the surface looks great. The guys play a lot faster on it, not just from kicking perspective, but from a running perspective, the guys look a lot faster. So yeah, we definitely like the condition that it's in. So I'm curious to see what it looks like on Saturday.
Yeah, and then week 3 you'll have some new turf in St. Louis as well. They finally replaced that in the dome, so that'll be good. Try to kick on that. You want to take me through kind of a typical week of prep for you, and does it make life any easier that you spend most of your time in Texas where you grew up?
Um, I would say, I mean, yes, it is. It is easier. I'm next to family. I've got a 3-year-old son and a 1-month-old. So I get to be next to family and spend time with them, which is really nice on us. So it works out perfectly being a part of this league. But it is windy up here in North Texas, and so we do practice outside. So getting used to those environments. I think we had 2 rain days, so I got to kick 1 time this week. Did some in the indoor, but yeah, it's kicking in environments like this that are similar to Audi Field are great. So we definitely get our practice, down here.
Yeah, let's talk about the team a little bit. I think you're one of probably 10 or 15 core guys that are, been here since day one. 3rd full season with DC. Other than the obvious, Reggie Barlow not being around, is there anything that's standing out as different maybe about this squad than the past 2 years?
I think it's very similar to the first, the XFL go around. The defense, I feel like, has been very consistent over the last 3 years. But if it wasn't obvious for this week 1, the defensive performance, I mean, it's very comparative to the first year, I think, as a team as a whole, as far as offense, special teams, and defense is concerned. And so, really, I'm waiting on Abram Smith, man. I was talking to him at the game. I was like, I'm ready for your breakout game, and he said it's coming. So whether that be this upcoming week or weeks down the road, he's definitely hungry for it. I think Birmingham's defense was just that good too. And our run game did well, but he didn't have any of the breakout runs that he did that first year. So I think it's comparative to the first year. I really do. I think the guys are back, the energy's back. Our defense is not only as good as they were, but I think better. I was talking to Greg Williams about that our size is bigger across the board. But I feel like we're faster and we have a lot more talent than we ever have. So it's exciting to see our team improve year after year, and I think this year is definitely going to be a testament to how well we're coached, but also how tough we are.
Yeah, opened a lot of eyes. A lot of DC people knew it, but when that line came out and it was a 7-point underdog, I had to scratch my head. I'm thinking, it was close last season, even down in Birmingham, and probably would have won that game without the weather delay. So, yeah, I feel like, with Barlow leaving, came in a little underrated, and that showed on Sunday. Now starting 1-0. I did want to ask you about the kickoff because, you've seen it all. You were one of the guinea pigs when this thing first rolled out in 2020, probably one of the first kickers to do it. But you've also had the perspective of kicking in the NFL and then in the UFL last season when they changed up and switched it back to traditional. So with all that experience, what do you prefer at this point? And if you were in charge, would you change anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, jumping back between leagues, different leagues, the XFL in 2020, the original XFL, and then jumping back into the National Football League, in and out, the last 4 or 5 years. I've got to see how the game is improving on special teams and as far as kickoff return is concerned. A lot of people outside looking in are like, they're not seeing the full perspective of what not only the NFL, but what the UFL is trying to accomplish is that we want to make the game more exciting and eliminate the pointless play of a touchback. You look at the rule change that just happened a few days ago where a touchback in the NFL now is coming out to the 35. It's exactly what we do in the UFL. And so the NFL is definitely either using us as a guinea pig or they're stealing things from the UFL, which is awesome for our league because we're proving that the concept works. But yeah, you could either back the kicker up, which we did in the UFL, backed us up to the 30. Now we're, to the 35. Or you can, have a consequence for hitting a touchback. And I think that's what the NFL is now doing. And we're proving that in the UFL that it's an offensive play. It's not just a special teams play that you can, put in some offensive schemes into that kickoff return. But it's an exciting play as opposed to just hitting another touchback. Of course, I think we all want the original kickoff that everybody loved, the Devin Hester returns back in the day and, and things like that, explosive plays. But as far as player health and safety is concerned, players are they're too big. They're bigger than they ever have been. They're faster than they ever have been. And when you're having high speed head on collisions, it's just not safe for players as a whole. So this is a way that we can get those high intensive plays, but also have player health and safety in mind. And so I think they're doing it perfectly. I wouldn't change anything from the NFL or the UFL is concerned. I think it's the way to go.
Absolutely. And yeah, like you said, with the NFL testing rules, they had announced that partnership. You saw the kickoff come up. Now some of the true line technology with the first down marker is coming up. It's going to be something every year that they take from this league. And, until eventually the rules are pretty similar to what they are in the UFL. When this league relaunched in 2023, I don't think I ever would have guessed that kickers would become the guys most likely to make an NFL roster. It feels like if you took the top 40 kickers on the planet, 32 make the NFL, and then the other 8 kick in this league. I just get the sense that maybe some other positional guys who played in the NFL, they say, well, if I don't make the 53-man, I can go to the practice squad, and if not, there's always the UFL. But I don't know. As a kicker, it feels more competitive. Like, you really have to earn one of these 8 jobs, and one of these 8 jobs is in very high demand for kickers everywhere.
Yeah, it is. I get people all the time that ask me how many people do what you do that are outside looking in the National Football League. And I think it's really 40 to 50 guys, including the 32 on NFL rosters, that have a real opportunity at making an NFL team. And so, yeah, those 8-10 spots outside looking in, 8 of them, of course, to the UFL, and maybe there's 2 or 3 guys that are on practice squads or lingering around as free agents. And, fortunately, I've kind of solidified my spot so far. I've done well the last 2 years. And then, I was with Detroit, signed with the Lions last year on a practice squad, is that I am one of those, 40 to 50 guys trying to get into the NFL. And, when you look at other positions, comparing it to that, there are only 32 kickers in the National Football League. There aren't, there's no backups. There's a few practice squad players maybe each year. But there's just not that many opportunities to get into the NFL. And so if you're not one of the, multi-million-dollar deal guys that off the top of your head that are playing in the NFL, you're just not going to get in. And it's how long do you stick with it to get your opportunity to play in the NFL? And I've done that, over the last, this is year 7, I guess, of me being out of college, is I've stuck around long enough to get those opportunities. Somebody gets hurt and I fill in, for Chris Boswell, I fill in for Matt Prater, I fill in for Phil Dawson and Jake Elliott. I was on the practice squad, and it's just, when does the right opportunity open? And if you're there long enough, you'll get your chance. And some guys hang it up too early. I think, some guys quit too early and throw it in. But it's an emotional roller coaster for sure. Trying to figure out how much longer do I want to do this to get my shot.
Yeah, especially when you got a 1-month-old at home, juggling all that can be tough. But Matt, congratulations on Special Teams Player of the Week. Off to a great start. Like I said, 4 for 4 in kicks, and just coming through when the team needs you the most. Appreciate you, and hopefully catch you later on in the season.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you calling. I think the one thing that I'd like to say is, man, we need fan turnout. That year 1 that we had, especially the night games, I think this Saturday night game will be a tell to the fan support that we'll have. I don't think there's much going on in the DMV on Saturday night, except for our game. And so, whereas last week there was a lot of competitive games around, so I'm excited to see if the fans turn out, because I think we're putting on a good product, if not similar to what teams offer in the NFL, and we're putting that on the field each week. So that'd be my stance to you guys, is keep fighting to try to get people to show up, because we need the support.
That is Matt McCrane. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, man.
TPG, I would say I'd like to see Mr. McCrane there have another 4 for 4 day, but I think I'd rather see my team score touchdowns. And I think he might actually agree, right? Being an unselfish teammate.
Hey, Matt, quick point. Before you get into this game, last week when we were previewing the DC game, you ragged me during the beer snake tutorial about having a glass cup. So since the game is back at Audi Field, I think it would be a good idea if I inform some fans that weren't there on Sunday how to properly do a beer snake. So, step 1, acquire your beer. Nice little koozie on there. I'm loving it.
Yo, we're no free ads.
So we're gonna put a little crack into this guy.
You're giving out free ads.
Here, we have our plastic pint right here, Matt. We got this plastic pint ready to go.
What is that, a Bud Select? Is that what you
Busch Light.
drink in St. Louis?
A Busch Light brewed in St. Louis, baby. Step 2, consume your plastic pint.
I'll do anything to drink on the show. Oh. Solid. Here it comes. Yeah.
Ooh. That was almost just as good as yours from last week.
Wasn't. No, it wasn't.
And step 3, stack your plastic pint. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just fed the beer snake. Matty Fresh, give me a round of applause, please.
No, because you guys can't do that because St. Louis fans can't handle their alcohol. Can't. That's why they drink Bud Select.
The Busch Light, all right?
Listen, we could do that every week. In fact, I'll sit here with you for 2 hours and go beer for beer, and we'll see who blacks out first if I have to. TPG, I will do anything to beat you. Again, week 3 is going to be a lot of fun. We have a lot of things planned for next Thursday, but, Memphis is the mindset. in week 2 for DC. Just like for you, it should be San Antonio. It's Memphis and DC. Defenders 8.5-point home favorites. Total here at 37. Forecast for our nation's capital, 8 p.m. Saturday, 68 degrees, no rains or winds, looking perfect. And boy, am I feeling the 2023 vibes. I'm with Matt McCrane. Not only is Abram Smith back, but we're back under the lights in Audi Field. Fun fact, DC played 3 night games in 2023 in their 9-1 season, 0 in 2024. Maybe that's what was missing. We need the beer snake after dark. Should be a great atmosphere after last week's win. And I'm hearing, TPG, sources are saying Showboat's coaches actually called Shannon Harris an errand boy back at HQ. So if you hear that, DC, hopefully, you can't be calling a coach an errand boy. Hopefully that's a little bit more bulletin board material for DC this week. Get the boys fired up. Ken Wisenhunt. His spring football coaching career officially begins on Saturday. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it changes things for the Showboats organization. Their side, it took a little money this week early, and then it kind of flipped back the other way. I saw 7.5. Now we're back at 8.5. So I think some handicappers were willing to take a bet on Wisenhunt. I didn't know he had disciples like that were just willing to blindly bet him, but maybe back to his days at the Cardinals with Kurt Warner, he has some insiders. But are they a live dog? I don't know. Probably not. Listen, the formula for DC here is simple. Don't turn the ball over. Just don't turn it over. You know you're better than Memphis. You just went round for round and eventually knocked out their big brother in Birmingham. So you know you're better than them. The reason Michigan beat Memphis, because they kept it simple. Well, other than playing 2 quarterbacks, that wasn't very simple. But other than that, they kept it simple. They didn't turn it over. It was a healthy dose of the run. They mixed in some very well-timed RPOs with Bryce Perkins and kept the boats off balance. And don't get me wrong, this is a solid defense in Memphis. I'll say it. Much improved under Jaron Horton. But they aren't ready for how comfortable Jordan Ta'amu is in this offense. And the biggest news of the week, the anchor's back up front. Big Liam Fornadell, 2-time All-League, sliding right back in at guard. The stock TPG just keeps going up for the defenders. They showed last week a 5-man rotation at wide receiver. That's incredible depth for the UFL. Kind of reminds me of the Stallions last year when they had 5, 6, 7 guys who could catch passes. Cornell Powell, interesting name, had 9 targets but just 2 catches. Little underwhelming, but would have to go back and look at all those to see what went wrong. Last week I think you would see JT throwing it 37 times in the box score and say, that's a hell of a lot for the UFL, and it is, especially when you're not playing from behind, right, trying to catch up. But DC actually ran it 30 times as well. They ran more plays in week 1 than St. Louis did. That's blew my mind. So they just had the ball all afternoon. Fred Keiss can play that field position ball control better than anybody. He's going to do it again. I expect DC to have some marathon drives. Late third quarter against Birmingham, they went on a 17-play, 75-yard crusade that ended up in a field goal, ate up a full 7 minutes. So I'm still confident in the run game. I know Smith only had 37 yards on the ground, but Fornadell up front, right, that's going to help with the push. Plus Deion Jackson as RB2, I think, is an upgrade from even some of the RB1s that DC tried to trot out last year. So when you look at the Showboats D, of course, some promising improvements, but there was really nowhere to go but up, right, after last year's complete turd of a defense. I mean, they hold Michigan at 3 yards a carry. Perkins and Ta'amu, similar type players when it comes to moving out of the pocket. So Horton should be prepared for that, right? A mobile quarterback. DC loves those medium passes. Ta'amu threw 16 passes between 5 and 14 yards. That medium range was just money. And I don't think Memphis can stop that. Perkins finds open guys at the same range. He went 16 of 19 as a passer. So I give the edge to the DC offense. I'd be comfortable laying 5.5 or 6, but I can't get all the way home with 8.5. The under probably a slight lean because, as TPG is going to explain to us next, the Boats can't make their mind up at quarterback.
So Matt, real quick, Audi Field after dark, is that when the lemon party starts?
Yeah, and you have a lemon allergy, so you better be careful and take your meds.
Hey, don't Google lemon party. All right, let's get into this Memphis offense, right? Interested to see what Wizenhunt's going to do with this quarterback situation. Like we said on the Monday show, Jim Turner said he was going to stick to playing two guys, alternating them each series. We don't know if that was a Ken Wisenhunt directive or if that was just what Jim Turner wanted to do. So we will see, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Troy Williams in this game. He was more efficient passing the ball, completing 70% of his passes, whereas Perry was only 59%. But looking at these Memphis receivers, someone else is going to have to step up other than Jonathan Adams. DC will probably likely match up DeAndre Baker with Adams, a former all UFL corner. So let's see which one of these guys is going to step up. Either it's going to be one of these CFL guys in Eli Stove or Kyle Loxley, or former teammate of Troy Williams, Isaiah Henney, on the Maulers. So like I said, one of these guys is going to have to step up and have a big game. And Perry and Williams last week took a combined of 3 sacks. So this offensive line is going to have to step up. Obviously, we all know DC had the 8 sacks. So hopefully Memphis, watching that film, they're going to be able to, really dial up those protections to how they need to be. Maybe add a running back, maybe bring a tight end into the formation to, slow this pass rush down. But Matt, I think it's going to be hard for the defenders this week. Coming off such an emotional win a week ago, they even dumped the water jug over their head coach at midfield. It's only week 1, Matt. It's only week 1. It's not the championship.
It was the guy's first win as a head coach. Oh,
I'll give you that, but maybe a little bit overreaction from the sidelines. So I'm predicting that this is going to be a tough defensive battle. 2 great defensive coordinators. And I think that Horton hears a Tamu and will force him into throwing a pick or 2. Write that in a children's book.
You are such a
Not only do I love for the Boats to keep it close, but I think they are a live underdog in this game. I know which way you're gonna go. So you hate me, I know.
Listen, I could feel week 3 coming after this show. This show has turned me against you already. I could already feel it coming. Like, this is crazy. There's no way you're picking Memphis. Did you see Memphis last week? I don't know if you did. I think you just looked at the box score and said, Troy Williams, 70% of his passes. Yeah, you got to throw the ball when you're down 2 touchdowns late.
You're the one that watched the box score. I actually sat down and watched that whole game. So
listen, Troy Williams under 101.5 passing yards. Hammer it. That is not happening against this pass defense. Obviously, it's a 2-0 start for DC. I'm expecting a very rowdy crowd at Audi Field on Saturday night. It was loud last week, but Sunday was a cluster, by the way, in DC. You had the Cherry Blossoms. You had the Nats at 1:30 against the Phillies, by the way, who brought a huge crowd. The Caps played. The Defenders at 3. Way too many tourists on the Metro. I'm getting off the Metro. I got pepper spray. Like, it was absolute cluster. We'll get to that another day. But this weekend, it's chill. Head down to the Navy Yard about 3 o'clock with your boys. The weather's going to be nice. Get a few beers in you at Walters before the Nats game at 4. You can grab yourself a $9 glizzy for dinner at Nats Park. A nice little buzzed sunset stroll down to Audi Field and party with the Beer Snake in primetime. What a perfect Saturday. Plus, I'll be there. So what more do you need, TPG?
I'm not buying it. Like I said, hey, coming off an emotional win, I like the Boats in this game, but obviously, as you know, I am very biased on this team, even dating back to last year.
Well, we'll see with Wisenhunt, right? He's 0-0 for all I'm concerned. It could be different without him, but I see where you're coming from with the Showboats. They don't have enough to win. They do have enough to cover. I'll put it that way. I would never bet against my team, but that's kind of where I'm at. All right, yet again, last and definitely least, it's Houston at Arlington. Renegades a double-digit home favorite at 10. Total here at 39. Forecast is fitting for a game like this. 43 degrees and 30-mile-an-hour winds for an 11 a.m. local kickoff. God bless you, James Baker. For Texas, TPG, That's like 8 degrees and a blizzard in Chicago. Like,
jeez,
that's terrible. So, and you know, this game used to mean something, man. You remember XFL 2020, the Texas Throwdown right before COVID? PJ Walker against Landry Jones. What a game that was. And how about even
last year was a great game. Yeah.
Or even the XFL South title game in 2023.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like since then, it's all gone downhill for Houston. The once formidable franchise under legends like June Jones and Wade Phillips stripped from them and handed off to CJ motherfucking Johnson, man. 1 in 10 in the UFL so far. And you know who that one came against?
The Arlington Renegades.
Bob Stoops. Yeah, there you go. So now I got to sit here and talk about this team, you know, as if I care whether it's Anthony Brown or Nolan Henderson that gets to suffer in Eric Price's oatmeal offense. I'm honestly more interested in tuning in just to see if Tom Cable will knock out CJ Johnson like he did one of his assistants on the Raiders. But hey, it's a Chris Odom revenge game. And I think there's 2 identical twins playing, by the way. Houston and Arlington playing against each other. So if you want a reason to fire yourself up, I guess that's kind of cool. I feel bad for the twin that's on Houston. Terrible. To be honest, I don't know what to say about this game. Justin Hall, I'm looking at you, Justin. You're Houston's only hope. Only you could find a way to score to save your team from being blanked in week 1, and you could do it again. 9 targets last week, caught 5 of them. We're getting 14 targets from Justin Hall this week. He's catching 10 of them. And since Houston will be down 2 scores all game with Perez absolutely shredding their secondary, it's the perfect time to start Justin Hall in DFS. Quick note on the Renegade defense. Are they as good as they showed against San Antonio? Think we'll have to wait until week 3 against Birmingham to really find out. One last warning here before I hand this off to TPG. Don't take the over 39. Don't take the over 39 here. Arlington's going to be up 26-8 on Houston's last drive, and you're going to be sweating out Nolan Henderson scrambling around like a crackhead hoping he doesn't fumble the ball. So just be safe and take the under. TPG, you get to talk about the exciting part of this game, Arlington's offense.
Yeah. Real quick, though, I saw on Twitter earlier this week that it looks like Brown's going to get the start, so that is a interesting decision. I know we were high on Nolan Henderson on the recap show, so yeah, that goes to show you CJ Johnson's inability to make the right decision. So, yeah, interesting decision made by them. So, looking at this Arlington offense, right? Really surprised at how many times they ran the ball. Rushed for 31 times a week ago, especially because last year it seemed like they were throwing the ball every down. And this Arlington O-line is going to come at this at this Houston Roughnecks defense just like the Battlehawks did. Not to mention Luis Perez, also deadly accurate a week ago, completing 80% of his passes to 8 different receivers, as Matt pointed out on Monday. So we saw Perez get to show off his wheels too, so I would love to see him get a rushing touchdown as well. On the flip side, this Houston defense, I mean, there's not much to talk about other than, you know, they got to tackle better. And as Kalen Ballage once said, you better go low, because if you go high, that's your ass, boy.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So, hey, in the betting markets, though, we've already seen a lot of movement with this game. Matt, when we were talking about early leans, I feel like I should have gave this game out. I know you briefly touched on it, but it opened at 8.5, and it's already up to 10.5. So I could see maybe this number, and these lines move a lot as it gets closer to kickoff. So I could probably see this thing closing at 12. So if you haven't already got that Arlington bet in, now's the time.
Yeah. I assume you're picking Arlington. No surprise here. Like, we don't have to go a different way. All right, we can agree on one pick this week.
Yeah, we'll agree on this one, the Renegades.
I was going to say, if you disagree with me here, I may cancel the show. For real this time, not even April Fool's. So, yeah, the Helmet Bandits back, right, to improve the 2-0. It's not a question of Arlington will win. We know that. It's a question of if they'll cover, TPG. And I'll say this, it's week 2. I think we can find more value on this card than laying 10.5 with a team that went 3-7 last year. I don't need to do that with the Renegades just yet. In fact, I'm pretty sure I laid points last year when they went on the road to Houston, and they lost outright. It was disgusting. So I sat there and I thought long and hard about this. You just talked about maybe an early lean. It was 8.5 on Monday. I put it in my car. I clicked it. It went up to 9.5 the next morning. I was busy April fooling you, still trying to ponder that on the side. Then it went to 10.5 yesterday. Thanks, but no thanks on 10.5. It's a sucker bet. You could have it. And people are going to take this thing at 12.5 and then be pissed off when it doesn't come through. There's so much better value here. It's not a team I'm ready to lay double digits with yet.
No, I mean, yeah. How could you? Well, I don't know. We saw a lot of action late on the Roughnecks last week, so maybe we could see this number go down. But if you're locked in, you're dialed into this week, and you watch that game on Friday night, I mean, there should be no reason why you're leaning into this Houston defense. Maybe the under, Matt. Yeah, any play on a total in this game?
Little teaser for the next segment, maybe. Little teaser for the next segment.
All right. Well, here. Wait. Can we cut this part? My laptop's about to die. I got to grab my charger real quick.
That's great preparation. I mean, can you believe this guy? He's chugging a beer. He's leaving set again. I have to take my opportunity while I can. Where do we turn now? Real quick before he grabs that charger. Let's get best bets out of the way so he can't make a play. We got to be smart about this one because we have a perfect record to maintain. And remember, don't let anybody tell you that you're going to lose a bet. You may win all the bets the rest of your life. It's a fact that 99.9% of gamblers quit before they win big. Just added this one before the show. Under 39. TPG just teased it. Arlington, Houston. Kind of shitty weather here. Makes for a 26-8 kind of game, like I mentioned before. I just see Houston, Arlington kind of slugging this one up. A lot of turnovers, wind. Maybe Perez doesn't get a full game and they go to Ehlers a little bit. Take the under. Definitely don't take the over. It's either under or stay off it completely. I did see some value in our game of the week. Brahma's +7. Spread is way too high. Maybe even sprinkle the money line a bit. I will say one warning before you decide how big of a bite you're going to take out of this apple. Wait for Thursday and Friday's injury reports to go public. Since San Antonio is an underdog, you're probably not going to cost yourself any line value here by waiting. If all 4 of those defensive starters who didn't practice on Wednesday are ruled out, I'm a little concerned, but if even 2 of them get the green light, they're deep enough. They'll be fine. I'll be a full unit if it's 2 or 3 of them starting. Under 39.5 here as well in Brahma's Battlehawks. It was 25-15 in the playoffs, XFL Conference Championship last year. That was when both teams were at their peak, and both offenses since then have downgraded at quarterback. So I'm going to grab another under on our highest total of the weekend. That'll do it for best bets. Let's make it 7-0 through 2 weeks. TPG wanted me to say, sell the wife, sell the kids, sell the swing set. We're going undefeated. If you could chat, by the way, in the chat and drop where that's from, we'll send you some Springball Boulevard merch if you can. That's our trivia question for the week. Who said that quote? One of TPG's favorite handicappers.
All right, dude. I'm good. You ready for best bets now?
Yep, they're already done, and that's all she wrote for tonight. You keep missing out, TPG. Don't know what to tell you.
What the hell?
Got to catch a train before it rolls out of the station. Best bets are going to be chugging along all season. But I will let you go ahead and plug our new socials again.
Oh yeah, real quick before we get out of here, two new accounts. We talked about this on Monday. Instagram and Twitter at Springball BLVD. Give us a like, follow. TikTok. Share, comment. Wait, what'd I say?
Twitter.
Did I? Oh, fuck. Instagram and TikTok at Springball BLVD. Like, comment, share, do all those great things, right? Let's get these pages and run it up. Bring some new fans to the league.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe on your way out of here too. And a final thought here. If you're watching this and you have the means, get out to a game this week. Like Matt McCrane said, especially DC fans, take your Tinder match on a date to Audi Field, fall in love on a Saturday night under the stars and the beer snake stacking plastic cups. If you're in St. Louis, take your pops out, share a Bud Select with them at the Dome. Hell, you could even take the kids out to Ford Field. Tell them, hey kids, it's the Detroit Lions minor league team. They won't argue with you. Just show them a picture of Jake Bates. It's the Little Lions, right? Listen, for the St. Louis scumbag TPG, I'm Matty Fresh. And always remember, there is no such thing as football season. Enjoy week 2. We'll be back with one of your favorites, the fastest 3 minutes in the UFL, on Sunday night.